All right. Okay, so good morning. I am here with Alvin Day, and this is the first in our little chats. I was reading one of your Monday morning Power Pack posts, Mr. Day, and that dealt with reinventing oneself. And what I liked especially was the question that you asked at the end. When was the last time that you acquired a skill that you were not taught in school? And why I found that interesting was that for me, it reminded me about the time in which we are now. Some of us, myself included, have been career students. We have been people who've been in school for all but the first 2 years of our lives. And I feel that with the relentless pace of change that we have to encounter and the deluge of information that we must process if we want to survive, that if we can't answer that question with something like last week or last month, then we're already in the wrong box. We're already on the wrong path. So I'll ask you, how does one go about reinventing oneself, especially if one has very little money to keep taking classes?
Understood. Well, thank you, Alvin, for the opportunity for us to share on some really important ideas here. I say that it is necessary to reinvent oneself, and I take it for granted that that is accepted. But the very first thing that is an indispensable requirement, if I might emphasize it that way, is that one must first come to believe it necessary to reinvent oneself. Because we're coming out of an age where people went to school to be accountant and they were accountant until they retired 40 years later, or to be chemist and they would be chemist and retire 40 years later, to an age where the very definition of accounting is changing and the very definition of being a chemist is changing. So the first requirement is for one to be in that space of saying it is necessary to continue to develop myself, to transform myself. And without that, people will just blindly focus on what we focused on a year ago, 10 years ago. The evidence is all over the press, all over the internet, all over conversations in educated places and opinions of people, that jobs are being lost, that careers are not existent anymore. And as I pointed out in that particular Monday morning Power Pack, there are many careers that we used to see that don't exist anymore. The telephone operator. Let me give you one for the baby boomers. The photo processor, the one who used to take the film and produce the film and create the negative and print it. They don't exist anymore. And many more careers are going out of fashion as we speak, including bankers and others. And so once you acknowledge that it is necessary to continue to reinvent yourself, it is also important to note that that does not necessarily mean change your career, because you can reinvent yourself in the very same area in which you have spent your time, except that you have new tools and new ways of being and new ways of doing what you've done. So those are just a couple of things to bear in mind. What I would say is the fundamental thing to understand is that reinventing yourself is not changing behavior. It's changing your thinking. If the question is, how do you reinvent your thinking? If the question is, how do you reinvent yourself? Just doing different things does not give you a sustainable solution. It is to get into a space where you think differently about yourself and about the world and about how you interact with the world and make a contribution to the world and become of value to the world, so the world will want to pay you and give you position and recognition and esteem. That thinking can come from two different sources, one internal and the other external. The internal is quietness, it's meditation. It's allowing your brain to operate at a level that we're not necessarily taught in schools. There is a stage at which your brain operates, a state in which your brain operates called the alpha state, where your brain operates at 13 cycles or so per second in terms of the frequency of the energy. At that state, versus the state where you're wide awake and observing and multitasking, at that state, you're almost asleep. In that state, your mind is able to access information that goes beyond your conscious mind. And when you allow yourself to be in a quiet place where you stop taking in sensory information from your eyes and your ears, and just allow your brain to quieten down and to be close to sleep, you might even fall asleep and wake up again. things will occur to you of innovation and creativity that you cannot just master by telling yourself to do it. So, this motivation, not motivation, but this meditation thing is a good way of receiving information about yourself, about the future, about problems, about projects on which you're working that go beyond your ability to do when you're just awake. Ideas will come to you. And if you simply go online or go to the bookshop and check it out, you'll find that there's an incredible amount being written about meditation. Now, this meditation is not associated necessarily with any particular religious belief. It's just a quietening down your brain. It's a neurological process of allowing the highway of your mind to travel without interference, and then writing down what comes to you. So I can't predict what will happen. And not every time that you do it, you'll get something that is sensible and making for practical use. But the practice of it takes you to a level where you find peace of mind and you're allowed to access information from the universe. We're trained to think of the material world, and we don't necessarily acknowledge that there's another world there. That's the internal. And even that internal is external, because you're doing it internally, but you're accessing information from the external world. It's just that not the normal conscious process. But now the one more overtly external is the following. It's very simple, actually. One, read, listen, study, gain information that you didn't have before, get trained. I didn't say get educated. I said get trained, because I'd like to make a distinction between education and training. Education is to enlarge the mind, to put facts and figures in the mind, to teach principles and disciplines and theorems and so forth. Training is a more practical way of utilizing what you know. It is more job related. It is more practical. It is more task related, and therefore has more connection to results in the economic and professional world. So get yourself trained. And the question of being able to afford it has been dispensed with long ago. One does not have to go to school to change one's thinking. One does not have to go to school to change to reinvent oneself, to use the vernacular that we're using here. Would you believe me if I told you that online are courses that are taught by Harvard and Yale and MIT for free? There's a whole community where almost everything available can be attained there. Now, will you do it in a systematic way where they give you a degree afterwards? No, but the content is there, and you can zero in on what's of interest to you. I'll tell you that the internet is one of the greatest, most magnificent things that mankind has ever encountered. And despite the fact that it's filled with misinformation and all kinds of trash that confuse the mind, if you know what you want, you can find it on the internet. So when you know what you want, go searching for it and dispense with all the thing about the chicken got run over by the bus. Who cares about that stuff, right? You can reinvent yourself by getting new thoughts inside your head if you know that you want to do it, if you believe it is necessary, and if you'll go search for it. And the last quick tip I'll give you is associate with people who are different from you. Think about it. It is said that if you take the top 5 people with whom you interact most every day, every week, every month, your income is about the average of what they make. That could be scary. Associate with people, and that it's not to suggest that economic scale is the only way of measuring that. People with peace of mind, people with ambition, people with professional aspirations and accomplishments, but associate with people who are different from you, because you're going to get a diverse set of inputs to help you now to see the various options before you, to prepare yourself better for this economy that is searching for non-traditional capabilities. And that's what I would say is how to reinvent yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks a million.
Okay, you're most welcome.